Yeah, Dad was quite a man. He was pretty highly respected for his integrity, and when he told somebody something, they knew they could depend on what he had to say. And I've tried in my life to pattern myself a little after him. There's no way that I was ever as good as he was. I remember when when I was trying to learn to shear sheep, and I'm going to tell you, there was 9 other sheep shearers there that was all top sheep shearers. I mean, any one of the 9 of them could be on any crew in the country because of their abilities. They were all good sheep shearers. And while I was trying to learn, you had certain spots on that sheep where it was a little tougher than other spots to get over and get around right. He'd watch me for a little while, and pretty soon he'd say, "Now, just lay off here, go down for a couple of sheep and rest a little, and watch Vern down there and how he gets over that particular spot, or watch Bill over here and how he gets around that particular spot, or watch Garnet, see how he handles that place." And that's really the way I learned to shear sheep. And it, actually, I was, and I think due to that, I think because of a lot of that, I was able to learn to get to be a good sheep shearer in a little less time than it took a lot of them. Normal conditions, it was around 4 years before a guy really got to be up to that point where he could shear 200 in a day. And if he ever got there, there was probably 20% or maybe less than that ever got to that point where they could shear 200 in an 8-hour day. And so his directions and the way he pointed things out to you, and just made it easy for me to learn. And Jack was the fortunate one, though. He couldn't hang on to a machine, and so he didn't get the opportunity to learn. And Darwin was smart enough. He was the intelligent one of the bunch. So he spent 1 year at it and said, "Hey, there's easier ways to make a living." That was the end for him. See, and I don't know. My boy spent about a year trying to learn, and he decided the same thing. There's easier ways, and I'll guarantee you there was lots of easier ways. Yeah, 1947 was the first year that I was here with Dad. Started off just wrangling sheep and pushing them in. I went from that to a year or so later tromping wool and then tying wool. And 1950 I started shearing sheep. And this was one of our better jobs all around, because we got to sit in one spot long enough to get a few more sheep done instead of having to move quite so quick. And that I remember tromping wool down in Nevada, where there's a different kind of sheep. There's finer wool, a lot smaller fleeces. And when they first put me in there, I could put 60, 65 fleeces, sometimes even as much as 70 fleeces in a wool bag. And this spot right here, the difference in the fleeces, we get 22 to 25 in a wool bag, in the same bag. So it's a whole lot of difference. There wasn't a great deal of difference in the weight, but it's just a difference in the type of wool, and a lot of difference in the dirt and things that was in the wool. Dad always wanted a good cook out there in the cook shack, so a good portion of the time he had Mother there cooking. Mother being an extremely good cook, there was never any squalls over having enough groceries and good groceries on the table. I remember at the time that my dad sold out to the rest of the cooperative, and the next guy that started to run it, and his wife started cooking, and they didn't last full season for most of the crew quit because they didn't have the food that they wanted to eat. There's part of that crew that thought Dad was spending a little too much money for food, and so the next year they changed their attitude when they got a different cook and got different food. That they changed their mind completely on that. It didn't take long. It was quite a thing. Anyway, it's Dad was a good manager. I remember him talking one time, telling a story about, said the shearing crew was set up down out of town quite a little ways, and down the road a ways was this ranch. Young fella and his wife, and they had several children around at the time, and the kids was all wanting to go to town to the circus and carnival that had come to town, and town was off quite a little ways. So he said something come up and they couldn't go to town to get there, and the kids started whimpering and crying and one thing and another. He told the kids, he said, well, it's all right. He said, we get our work done here in time. He said, we'll go down tonight when the sheep shearers go to eat, and he said, you can go watch the sheep shearers eat. He said, that's pretty near as good as going to the circus. And that was a story that Dad used to tell us once in a while. And I'll tell you, it was about true. This is one of the prettier spots, I think, that we ever stopped to shear. We've got the creek in below us, and it's a pretty good area, though. It's a beautiful area, and this is the Bigwood River. Good fishing while we were here, always was. We really enjoyed this spot. It's one of the places here, like I said, that I did every job that there was to do on the shearing plant at one time or another over a period of several years. In 1950, when I started, the shearers was getting 30 cents a head. 51 and 52, they had a really good market for wool, and so it got along good. And then it fell off drastic. And about 50, I don't remember, it was 53 or 54, we went back to 25 cents a head. And still at the same time, by that time I got to the point where I could shear 200 most days if we got 8 hours in. And so 200 head at 25 cents made me $50, and that was big money for a man in those days. So I was happy. The last that I sheared, which was in 88 was the last that I sheared. We got $1.35 a head for shearing sheep, and actually, as far as the economy was concerned, couldn't make as much money then as we did back when we was getting 25 cents a head. I was 56 years old the last year that I sheared sheep. Turned 57 right just after it was over with. But, I did shear 200 head in 8 hours during my last year at one point, so I figured that was a pretty good spread. From 20 years old to 56 years old was a pretty good time to be able to do that. Myself, I always kind of liked hard work. My dad kind of taught me hard work didn't hurt. And but he was all I can think of is fond memories. He was a beautiful man.